to me, he was very introvert, and he was doing the clown, he was doing things, he was rehearsing what he was getting in shape for what he was going to perform, and then suddenly, whoop, just finished, and he was not with you. I mean, he was away. He was strange and special and sad in a way.
I think it was a very happy incident that Danny Kaye was going to Europe on an airplane, and sitting next to him was Maurice Pate, the first executive director of UNICEF, and they got to be talking. And the interest of Danny in children was very obvious.
When you're talking to people like these, well, you just keep talking and hope your ignorance isn't showing.
Mr. Pate told him the problems of children in third world countries, how many of them dying before the age of 2 or 3. In fact, even the first year, the infant mortality was so high in some of the countries, as high as 150 per 1,000. And that, I think, stirred Danny into doing something. He was given a UN laissez-passer, in which he was identifying a UN Goodwill ambassador for UNICEF.
He was the first of these so-called ambassadors at large, or Goodwill ambassadors. And he was probably the most effective.
To us, Danny was a major star. But for the children in a village in Thailand, he was just a foreigner with a red head, with funny-looking shoes, jumping around.
It's good for you, good for you, good for you. Come on, sweetheart. Come on, baby. Good for you, That's all? No more? No.
A very cynical German journalist came up to me the other day and said, "Don't you think that work for UNICEF is a little bit like a raindrop on a hot stone," which is a German saying. And I said, "No, I'm an optimist. I think it's a drop in the ocean." Children automatically flocked to him. He was very good with them. And there was something of the child in his nature anyway. There was a feeling of fundamental helplessness.
He managed to retain, knowingly, some of the childlike naivete with which youngsters approach the world.
All these boats are my boats. There's the cruiser, there's the destroyer, there's the motorboat, there's the battleship, and over there in the corner by my big toe is the LMSOT. The only trouble is they all sank, all except one, the submarine.
It wasn't that he was childlike, is that he was connected to his instincts, which made him open to other people, other children, and made him able to respond in whatever the appropriate way was for the occasion.
I was shocked to hear about the Duchess. What did the Duke do?
Pardon?
The Duke. What did the Duke do?
The Duke do?
Yes. And what about the Doge?
Oh, the Doge.
Yeah. Well, what did the Doge do?
The Doge do?
Yes, the Doge do.
Well, the Doge did what a Doge does. When a Doge does his duty to a Duke, that is.
What? What's that?
Oh, it's very simple, sir. When the Doge did his duty and the Duke didn't, that's when the Duchess did the dirt to the Duke with the Doge.
Who did what?
How would you like to have to be funny? You must love it a great deal, and I think Danny loved it a great deal, just as he loved standing up in front of a symphony orchestra. The thing that Danny enjoyed most about show business was conducting the New York Symphony, because that was, to him, comedy in a way that nobody else was doing.
Danny had never studied music. He couldn't read a musical score. It would mean nothing to him. He'd pick up any page and one would look like another. He would listen to a very complicated piece of music, and he'd be able to sing back the most complex rhythms imaginable. He would sing the complicated parts, for example, in Stars and Stripes Forever, and unfailingly bring in each member of the orchestra right on cue.
Here he comes, called the French horn. Here comes Signor Pizzicato. All right, gentlemen, let us begin. And Tubby began to play his own little melody. Oh, that wretched tuba snapped the violins. He'll disgrace us. The trombone stuck out his tongue. And the trumpet snickered. Tubby, said Signor Pizzicato. Tubby, I've never heard a tuba play a melody before. Would you play the rest of it? Oh, said Tubby.
He did quite a few children's records. One very well-known one was Tubby the Tuba.
Why, how perfectly wonderful, said the strings. Please, Tubby, may we sing your tune, too?
Poor Tubby, who never gets a chance to play a solo, he just plays oompa oompa in the background. Tubby is given a solo and soars forth.
And they all play.
I met Danny the first time when I was cooking at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. And afterwards he came into the kitchen and said, "Where's the chef? Let me, let me see him." And he was really very excited.
Danny became interested in Chinese cooking. Now, when Danny became interested in something, there were no half measures taken. He went the whole way. He spent lots of time in the kitchens of the superb top Chinese restaurants in San Francisco, Chinatown.
He would put any waiter of the Benihana chain to shame by throwing the knife higher and catching it in a more dangerous manner than any other meat cleaver of the Orient.
I think if Danny Kaye would have become a cook or a chef in his early days, he would be one of the greatest ever.
2 by 2, the animals 2 by 2.
It was in 1970 that something very strange happened. For the first time for 30 years, Danny Kaye was back on Broadway in a new show by Richard Rodgers called 2 by 2. It was the Noah's Ark story as though it were happening to a lower middle-class Bronx family. Well, it was predictable. The reviews were terrific and the show was a sellout.
It's wonderful going boating with a floating zoo.
Our trouble didn't really start until Danny, one night in his jumping around on stage, fell off a plank that he walked down, and if he didn't break his leg, he came very damn near to it. And he was in a cast. And he was immediately put into New York Hospital and had announced that he was going home and that he had to leave the show. And I said, "Danny, I think you're making a mistake in going back to California. You are going to sit there in your kitchen and you're going to stew." why don't you come back and do the show in a wheelchair and then in crutches and then as a cane as you get better? I will write you a set of ad-libs.
The show didn't exactly suffer from Danny being in the wheelchair. Of course, it was the talk of Broadway. It got into all the newspapers, and Peter Stone's ad-libs were so good that Danny, of course, added his own.
I mean, he rolled down a ramp in his wheelchair and he puts on the brakes at the last minute, and he makes reference to the fact that if he had gone through the wall, he would be in the show next door, and he started doing it a lot. Very shortly thereafter, he was sort of out of control.
Noah was now out of the window, but Danny Kaye was in his element. And so were the audiences. They were laughing, shouting, screaming for a Danny Kaye show just as they had done in the old days. The only person who didn't like it was Richard Rodgers, who from that moment on didn't speak to Danny again. And when Danny left the show, it folded, because without him, there was no show. He never went back to Broadway and only made one more major film on a subject very close to his heart.
It was about the American Nazi Party doing a demonstration, and Skokie was full of Jews who were living there, and particularly survivors from the Holocaust.
I think he really felt that role from his soul in a different way, perhaps, than some of the other things, he had done. I mean, after all, he was Jewish.
He had a very powerful scene in a synagogue where he bears his arm.
You know what this is? A tattoo. A number. 24, 34, It's a concentration camp number. Do you know what that meant? Can you know what really happened? Can you know what the swastika was? Can you know what is a Nazi?
He felt unsure about the business of acting and the way he had to act. He did this the first time, and I really didn't know what he was up to. He said to me, just hold it a minute, just hold it. And he stepped forward and addressed the crowd and said, now, if I hold up one finger, you sing, you lot here, those three, ring, ah. Now, 2 fingers, you lot here, ah. And the 3 fingers, ah. And then he said, they went, and they were all singing together, and he got a whole sort of scene going with the thing. And I believe it was something that he used to do in his act years ago. But he did that for about 5 minutes. And he got applause. They applauded him for it because they loved him for it. And then he felt happy. Then he would go on acting.
I came here to sit, to listen, not to say anything. But I don't want to hear about tactics and strategies. This is not a game. I will not go home. I will not pull down the window shades. Not this time. Not in my own town. If a Nazi marches here in Skokie, you can believe me, I will be there. I will be there with baseball bats, with a gun, with anything. I will be in Skokie with the Nazis alive.
Many people have felt he never fulfilled his potential. I remember saying to him, I wish he would do more movies. And he said, I can't do those old, I don't remember if he said Danny Kaye movies, but the Up in Arms, the Walter. But he said, I'm different and the times are different.
Maybe it bored him, having climbed that mountain.
He had outlived his spot, his place.
When your parent gets ill and you know they're going to die, you become a child again. You're a combination of parent, I used to sit in the hospital and feed him. And you become a combination of parent and child.
Suddenly, who should arrive while we're eating but Danny Kaye? And he came over to Sylvia and he wished her a happy birthday and he kissed her. And he was in the hospital at the time. He'd been brought by an ambulance. Within a week after that, he was gone.
Danny was one of the great comedians of the cinema. I think he, in his own way, of course, he's more verbal than a Keaton or a Chaplin, but he certainly is right up there with, in my opinion, with the best of them. As a performer and an artist, I think he stands alone.
But did you put the pellet with the poison in the vessel with the pestle?
No! The pellet with the poison's in the flagon with the dragon. The vessel with the pestle has the brew, that is true.
The pellet with the poison's in the flagon with the dragon. The vessel with the pestle has the brew, that is true.
Just remember that.
Yes, thank you very much. The pellet with the chasley. The pellet with the poison is in the pasley with the chasley. Just remember that.
He was my friend. Sometimes he was my Chinese cook. Sometimes he was my pilot. But I don't feel that I really ever knew who Danny was. He was so many different people. I don't think Danny knew who he was himself.
I don't think anybody knew Danny really well. And that's probably our fault as much as it would be Danny's.
And I'm sorry that I didn't get to know him better, because I would like to have known him better. And I hope he wasn't, I hope he was shy. I hope he wasn't sad. No?
And this is where you came in. But do not fret, my friends. This is a picture that ends in the middle for the benefit of the people who came in the middle.
Hooray, the bad old glockenspiel is dead. Happy little fiddle trumpet the wed. Tarakata!